There are moments when heaven stops speaking, and that silence is judgment. You are standing at that threshold now. Obey before the silence begins. There are sacred pauses in the corridors of eternity when even the winds of heaven grow still. It is not the quiet of peace, but the hush of divine observation. The moment before decree becomes destiny. The angels hold their breath. The prayers once vibrant in the air seem to fall silent, and the listener is left standing between what was spoken and what will never be said again. This is that hour. Heaven is not merely still. It is waiting. Waiting for obedience. Waiting for surrender. Waiting to see who will move before the silence seals what mercy once offered. Heaven's silence is never empty. It echoes with the weight of ignored whispers, with the residue of warnings that were heard but not heeded. When heaven stops speaking, it is not because there is nothing left to say, but because the message has already been delivered, and still, humanity hesitates. Those who delay now stand on holy ground, trembling at the border between grace and judgment, mercy and withdrawal. The sound of silence is not absence. It is evidence. It is the sign that heaven has spoken enough, and now waits to see what you will do with what you have already been given. This message is not for everyone. It is not for the content, nor the complacent, nor those satisfied with spiritual noise. It is for the soul who has felt the divine distance lately, who has prayed and heard nothing, who has sought and found only stillness. The silence is not abandonment. It is invitation. It is the divine call to obey before heaven withdraws its voice. You are standing at a threshold unseen by mortal eyes, a line drawn by mercy, a pause allowed by grace. Beyond it lies a silence that carries judgment, not in wrath, but in sorrow. For some, the signs have already begun. A dream that lingers, a prayer that feels heavy, a moment in worship where heaven's presence felt near and then suddenly gone. That was not coincidence. It was the whisper before the withdrawal, the final prompting before the silence begins. This is the edge of eternity's breath, the stillness before the separation. You are being watched, weighed, and warned. Obey before the silence begins. For once it does, even heaven will not call your name the same way again. Type "I will obey" in the comments if this message speaks to your spirit. Blessing code 777 is now surrounding you. There is a stirring tonight within the heavens, a quiet that is not peace, but preparation. The Spirit of truth is near, hovering between the words and the silence, watching to see who will discern the shift before it fully descends. For heaven is speaking less, not because it has nothing left to say, but because it has already spoken. The voice that once whispered in your prayer, that once burned in your dreams, that once breathed into your stillness, that voice now lingers at the edge of withdrawal. This is not abandonment. This is divine restraint. The voice has given warning after warning, call after call, and now heaven pauses to see what the earth will do with the last instruction given. Do you feel it? The air has changed. The tone of the Spirit is heavier. The same prayers that once brought tears now echo back to you unanswered. The same worship that once felt open now feels restrained. This is not distance. This is a countdown. Before this week ends, some will feel the shift. The voice will grow quiet. What was once easy to hear will become faint. What was once near will feel far. This is the sound of judgment wrapped in mercy, the stillness that precedes the sealing. Heaven's silence is not a punishment. It is a verdict. It is the moment heaven says, "We have said enough. Now we will watch." This message does not come for the multitude. It comes for the remnant, for those who have sensed the decline in divine communication and wondered if they've lost favor. You have not lost favor. You are being tested. The silence is not rejection, but refinement. Heaven is drawing a line, and those who cross it in obedience will walk in new power. Those who ignore it will not even realize when the heavens close their mouth above them. The silence of heaven is sacred, but it is also terrifying. It is the pause between mercy and movement. In the book of Amos, it is written that there shall come a famine, not of bread nor water, but of hearing the words of the Lord. That famine is spiritual drought, the silence of heaven. It begins quietly. The heart that once burned in worship cools. The discernment that once protected begins to fade. The urgency to obey becomes dull. And then, when the silence fully sets, the soul drifts without anchor, unable to hear, unable to feel, unable to discern. That is not peace. That is judgment. Yet even in this warning, mercy lingers. Heaven delays its silence, waiting for one more act of obedience. The Spirit whispers, "Move before I stop speaking." The voice calls softly, "Do not delay. What you ignore today will define tomorrow." For obedience now is not optional. It is survival. It is the difference between standing under open heavens and standing before closed gates. Every delay is a declaration. Every hesitation, a silent answer to the divine. The angels are recording responses even now. Some are moving quickly, aligning, surrendering. Others are hesitating, analyzing, resisting. And heaven watches. For heaven's silence is not absence, it is attention. The voice may withdraw, but the gaze remains. The question is no longer will you hear, but will you obey what you've already heard? Listen carefully. This is your final prompting before the stillness sets in. Obedience will preserve your communion. Rebellion will invite the quiet. Heaven is not done speaking. It is waiting to see if you are done resisting. Type "I hear you, Lord" in the comments if you receive this message. Blessing code 888 is now active around you. There are nights when the heavens feel sealed, when your prayers rise like smoke but never return as rain. You kneel, you cry, you whisper words into the unseen, yet there is only stillness. A sacred stillness that feels like abandonment. You lift your hands, but the presence that once filled the room has grown distant. Your spirit senses something shifting, but your mind cannot name it. This is the mystery of divine silence. The moment when heaven pulls back to test what still remains in you when the voice is gone. The heart trembles in confusion, for the silence feels heavy, like the pause between heartbeat and breath. You begin to ask, has heaven turned away? Has grace withdrawn? But no, child of light, the silence is not a curse. It is a call. It is the divine disruption that shakes the foundations of your comfort to awaken the obedience buried beneath your fear. Heaven has not forgotten you. Heaven is watching how you handle the quiet. For silence, though it feels empty, is full of meaning. It carries the weight of what has been spoken before. You remember the instruction you delayed, the prompting you ignored, the act of faith you postponed, and now you wonder why the voice has dimmed. This is the threshold moment when divine patience grows still, not in anger but in expectation. Heaven will not repeat what you refuse to obey. The silence is the echo of disobedience, a mirror reflecting your delay back to you. And yet, even now, the mercy of God waits, holding back the final quiet, watching to see if your spirit will break before your pride does. Those around you may not understand this holy struggle. They look at your stillness and think you have lost your passion, your faith, your fire. They whisper that you have fallen, that you have been forgotten. But what they do not see is that heaven's silence is your secret classroom. The teacher is silent during the test. While they judge the quiet as rejection, heaven calls it refinement. Your prayers may seem unanswered, but in the unseen realm, the angels are taking note of your endurance. You are not forsaken, you are being weighed. The silence is proof that heaven is measuring your maturity, testing whether your devotion depends on the sound of His voice or the truth of His word. There are watchers in the spirit, ancient ones who observe when the faithful grow weary. They see the tears that fall when heaven feels far, the restless nights where you replay every command, wondering where you went wrong. But they also see the moments you stay on your knees, even when no voice speaks back. That faith, that persistence, becomes the fragrance that rises to the throne. Heaven's silence may feel cruel, but it is the highest compliment to your spirit. It means you have already been entrusted with enough instruction to walk without constant reminders. The quiet is not the end of communication. It is the beginning of your authority. Yes, confusion may surround you, questions may rise like storms, and tears may fall without relief. But every tear is counted, every sigh recorded. Do not despise this divine mystery. The silence is not absence, it is anticipation. The heavens are waiting to see if your obedience will unlock the next word. Heaven's voice is not gone. It is waiting for your surrender to sound the next command. The moment you obey what you last heard, the voice will return, stronger and clearer than before. The key to breaking the silence is not another prayer. It is action. So wipe your tears, steady your heart, and remember this. The silence is sacred. It is the cocoon between promise and manifestation. It is the divine pause before the trumpet sounds again. Heaven has not left you. It is watching to see if you will still say yes when you feel nothing. The stillness is not punishment. It is preparation. Type "I will not give up" in the comments if you receive this message. Blessing code 1919 is now active over your life. Beloved, if this message has stirred your spirit, know that you are part of a divine movement. One where heaven's word travels through voices like this to reach hearts across the earth. When you sow into this mission, you're not supporting a channel. You're igniting revival. Every seed you plant becomes light in someone's darkness, a whisper of God's voice in another's silence. The oil of heaven flows where obedience meets generosity. I feel it even now, a holy invitation to act. I'm calling you personally. Be part of this prophetic river. When you give through Super Thanks, membership, or PayPal link in the video description, you are sowing into souls who are one breath away from hearing God again. This is not a donation. It's a divine response. Heaven sees. Heaven records. Heaven rewards. Type ISOW into light if you are joining this divine mission. Blessing code 1010 now covers your obedience. There is a war hidden within the silence, a war few discern, a war that takes place not in sound, but in stillness. Many mistake this quiet as abandonment, but those with spiritual sight know better. This silence is the strategy of heaven, the divine camouflage that conceals the movements of the Almighty. When heaven is silent, it is not distant, it is deliberate. The commander of hosts has not turned his face away. He has turned his gaze inward, searching the depths of your loyalty. This is not rejection, it is refinement. You are being tested not by what you hear, but by what you do when you hear nothing. Every great soul must walk through the soundless battlefield, where faith is stripped of feelings and obedience becomes the only language heaven understands. It is in this war of stillness that soldiers are made and servants are revealed. When heaven grows quiet, the flesh grows restless. Your emotions rise in protest, demanding answers, demanding signs. But the silence of God is his forge. It burns away the need for validation, melts the craving for affirmation, and molds a warrior who no longer needs constant confirmation to move. The quiet is not empty, it is fire. It purifies. It separates. It proves who truly trusts the unseen hand. And make no mistake, the silence is warfare. While you question what went wrong, heaven is engaging in battles you cannot see. Angels are moving in realms beyond your awareness. The silence of heaven on earth often means there is noise in the spirit. The enemy is confused, for he cannot trace the movements of a God who speaks without words. Every delay, every unanswered prayer, every moment of quiet agony is actually a strategy in disguise. Heaven fights through stillness. Heaven observes to perfect the victory. The pause is not weakness, it is power under restraint. Even when you cannot hear, you are being watched. Every tear that falls, every sigh that escapes your lips, every moment you choose faith over fear, heaven records it all. Divine surveillance is constant. The silence is not the absence of attention, it is the intensification of it. Heaven leans closer when it appears to step back. The test is in your reaction. Will you doubt? Will you complain? Will you give up before the command returns? Or will you stand firm, eyes lifted toward unseen realms, whispering, "Even if you do not speak, I will still obey"? That whisper carries more weight in the spirit than 1,000 sermons. The chaos you feel, the doubt that hovers, the distance that torments, all of it is refining you. You are being stretched, strengthened, and solidified. The silence is hammering out the weaknesses that words once hid. Heaven is training you to live beyond dependency, to trust the divine rhythm even when the melody fades. When heaven stops speaking, it is teaching you to listen differently. It is awakening the inner hearing, the kind that perceives truth even in absence, that recognizes God not by his speech but by his stillness. You are in a divine forge, and the heat you feel is the shaping of your destiny. The silence will either sanctify you or separate you. It will either push you deeper into obedience or pull you into rebellion. This is the battle line, not between good and evil, but between surrender and pride. Heaven is watching which side you will choose. For the one who endures this silent war with faith intact will emerge carrying new authority, new discernment, and new power. The silence of heaven is not punishment, it is preparation for promotion. Stand firm in the quiet. You are being trusted with a silence few could survive. Type "I am still standing" in the comments if this message finds you ready. Blessing code 2323 is now active upon your faith. There is a trembling in the heavens tonight, not of fear, but of movement. The scrolls are shifting in the hands of the scribes of light. The ink of mercy is beginning to dry, and the divine quills hover, waiting for one last act of obedience before the next decree is sealed. Heaven is preparing to pull back its voice from those who have grown comfortable in delay. You have heard the whispers. You have felt the tug. You have sensed the warning that this moment is holy, and yet some still linger at the edge of surrender, hoping heaven will wait a little longer. But heaven's patience has a rhythm, and that rhythm is reaching its end. The silence that is coming is not natural, it is supernatural. A divine withdrawal meant to expose who truly listen. Within days, the atmosphere will shift. The voice that once spoke clearly will begin to fade for those who ignored its urgency. This is the way judgment begins, not with thunder, not with lightning, but with quiet. Heaven does not always roar in anger. Sometimes it simply stops speaking. The absence of instruction is itself a verdict. The stillness becomes the sentence. For when heaven ceases to guide, it has already decided. The silence that descends is not cruel, it is consequential. Heaven has watched, waited, whispered, and now it will withdraw. Not in wrath, but in sorrow. Even now, I see the watchers preparing. Angels once sent to deliver words are now sealing scrolls shut. The messengers who once stood beside your prayers now return to their stations, awaiting orders from the throne. The spiritual correspondence has slowed, not because heaven has forgotten you, but because it is waiting for one response: obedience. The command was given to your spirit long ago. You remember it. It still echoes in your conscience like a faint melody. Something you promised you would do. Something you swore you would surrender. Something you said you'd release. Heaven has not forgotten your vow. Heaven is watching to see if you will fulfill it before the silence takes its place. This is not a time for delay. The delay is the doorway to deafness. Each moment you postpone obedience, the sound of heaven grows dimmer. And when heaven's sound is gone, confusion becomes the new guide. The enemy speaks loudly in silence, hoping to fill the vacuum that disobedience creates. He thrives in hesitation. He whispers lies into the pauses that faith should have filled. If you do not move now, deception will move in your place. Obedience is your shield. Hesitation is your surrender. Hear me clearly. This silence will not come suddenly. It will creep in quietly. It will begin with small shifts, prayers that feel unanswered, discernment that feels blurred, an uneasiness that lingers in the soul. Those are the early tremors of heaven's withdrawal. But there is still time. Heaven's door is still ajar. The whisper still calls, "Obey before I stop speaking." This is your last invitation before the pause becomes permanent. If you move in obedience now, the heavens will reopen. If you remain still in disobedience, the silence will settle like a stone upon your spirit. This is the line between mercy and motion. The divine is watching who will respond before the echo fades. Judgment does not always look like destruction. Sometimes it looks like distance. Heaven does not always strike. Sometimes it simply steps away. And when the voice departs, the emptiness that follows is unbearable. Move now. Act quickly. Return to the last instruction given. Heaven's silence can still be stopped, but only by obedience. This is not a prophecy of doom. It is a cry of rescue. The Father's heart is not eager to judge, but desperate to save. His silence is not his desire. It is his defense against continual rejection. He has spoken. He has waited, and now he watches. This is your turn to respond. Obey before heaven seals its word. Obey before the silence begins. Type "I will move now" in the comments if this message speaks to your heart. Blessing Goat 3003 is now surrounding your obedience. Be still now, not in fear, but in sacred awareness. The hands have not withdrawn in hatred. They have only hushed to see who still listens when the sound fades. This stillness is not permission for passivity. It is a command to discern. You must learn to hear what the Spirit said before it grew quiet. For what heaven last spoke remains the key to what heaven will speak next. You are not abandoned in the silence. You are being guarded within it. The quiet that surrounds you is a divine cocoon, a protective enclosure where heaven shelters the obedient while exposing the rebellious. Do not mistake the quiet for emptiness. It is the atmosphere of preservation. Heaven is not ignoring you. Heaven is insulating you. When the silence comes, you must not panic. You must not rush. You must not fill the void with noise born of fear. The silence of heaven is the test of trust. It is the moment to recall what you already know, to cling to what you've already heard. Remember what your heart recorded in the days when heaven spoke freely. Those instructions are still alive. The voice of God does not expire. It only pauses. Go back to the last thing he told you and obey it again. Obedience has an echo. It will reopen what silence has closed. Do not fear the hush, for in stillness heaven fights. While your lips grow silent, the angels move with quiet precision. There is warfare occurring behind the stillness, unseen negotiations in the spirit realm. Heaven does its greatest work in silence because the enemy cannot intercept what he cannot hear. When you stop striving, heaven starts moving. When you rest, the armies of God advance. That is why the Spirit calls, "Be still, and know that I am God." Not as comfort, but as strategy. Stillness is not surrender, it is alignment. Now is the hour to guard your atmosphere. Fill your space with worship, not worry. Let repentance cleanse your heart, for sin clogs the channels of divine speech. Speak less and listen more. The one who listens in silence receives revelation others miss in the noise. The silence is not the absence of communication. It is the invitation to communion. Heaven is drawing you deeper, away from surface prayers and shallow petitions, into the quiet places where secrets are revealed. The whisper of God is not heard in chaos, but in consecration. Do not think that heaven has left you unprotected. The silence you feel is not an absence of presence. It is an increase of unseen covering. Heaven stands guard around those who yield quickly. Every act of obedience fortifies your defense. Every moment of humility draws angels closer. Even when no word is spoken, divine protection is active. You are shielded by silence, hidden by holiness. The quiet you endure now is the evidence that you are marked for preservation. The loudness of the world cannot touch what is guarded by heaven's stillness. So take heart, chosen one. The silence is not punishment. It is preparation. It is the breath before the next command, the pause before the next wave of revelation. Heaven is not finished with you. Heaven is fortifying you. The silence is temporary, but the transformation it brings is eternal. Do not fill it with fear. Fill it with faith. Do not rush to speak. Wait to hear. And when the next word comes, you will recognize it instantly, because your spirit will have learned the language of stillness. This is your instruction. Be still, but not passive. Be humble, but not helpless. Be silent, but not empty. The heavens have not forgotten you. They are fighting for you. Rest in the quiet and let obedience be your worship. For those who yield quickly will be surrounded by divine protection. The silence is your shield, not your sentence. Type "I am protected by heaven" in the comments if you receive this word. Blessing Ode 4141 now covers your stillness with divine fire. The silence is shifting now. What once felt like exile is revealing itself as elevation. The stillness that pressed against your soul was never meant to crush you. It was meant to create you. Heaven has not punished you. Heaven has promoted you. The quiet space where you felt forgotten was the very ground where your new authority was being born. In the silence, your dependence on emotion died. In the silence, your hunger for validation dissolved. In the silence, your identity began to anchor in something eternal. You are no longer the one who begs for answers. You are the one who carries them. The silence was not the end of communication. It was the beginning of transformation. Listen now, for the atmosphere around you is shifting. The heavens are not angry. They are proud. You have endured what others could not. You stood when the voice disappeared, and because you stood, heaven is about to speak again. The silence was not your defeat. It was your development. Every tear you shed in that quiet space watered the soil of your future. Every unanswered prayer was not ignored. It was invested. Every moment you remained faithful was written in the scroll of endurance. Heaven has been writing your promotion in invisible ink, revealed only to those who pass the test of stillness. And now, that ink begins to glow. Do you feel it? The pressure that once pressed against your chest now feels lighter. The weight that once held you down now feels like wind beneath your spirit. That is the mark of transformation. You are no longer surviving silence. You are interpreting it. The pain that once made you question God is now the very evidence that He has been working in secret. The silence you endured was the sacred cocoon before your emergence. Just as the caterpillar dissolves in stillness before the butterfly breaks through, so your old self dissolved in the quiet of obedience. You are not who you were before the silence began. The furnace has changed you. The whisper has matured you. The pause has refined you. What heaven withheld, heaven now releases. but not as it was before. This time, the voice will not come to guide you alone. It will come to commission you. The silence has birthed authority in your spirit. You now speak not as one seeking permission, but as one carrying presence. The heavens trust you differently now, because you proved your loyalty in stillness. The angels know your name because they watched your endurance when others fell away. Your faith has become your fragrance, and the throne has breathed it in. Do not fear what comes next. You will not return to the uncertainty you once knew. The silence that once tested you has now empowered you. You will walk with a new steadiness, a calm that shakes darkness, a peace that confuses demons. You have learned that obedience in silence is louder than worship in noise. Heaven's quiet has given you strength words could never impart. You have stepped beyond dependency into divine partnership. You are no longer waiting for instructions. You are walking as the instruction. Rise now, chosen one. The time of trembling is over. The silence that once silenced you has now strengthened you. The hush of heaven has formed a roar within your spirit. This is your awakening. This is your emergence. The same stillness that once felt like judgment has become your anointing. Heaven's silence has not emptied you. It has empowered you. And now, the one who endured in quiet shall speak with authority in the earth. Type "I am empowered by heaven" in the comments if this word speaks to your spirit. Blessing code 5252 is now ignited upon your destiny. The heavens are stirring again. The silence that once wrapped the earth like a shroud is beginning to unravel, and the first sound to pierce it is your name. It has been spoken once more in the courts of light, not in question, but in confirmation. You have been found faithful in the silence. You have been proven trustworthy in the unseen. Heaven's pause was not punishment. It was preparation to reveal your true rank in the spirit. Now the scrolls are opening, and the decree of your next assignment is being read aloud before the throne. This is the hour when what was hidden becomes revealed, when what was whispered in testing becomes shouted in victory. Heaven is no longer silent. Heaven is selecting. The purpose of the silence was separation. Heaven was watching who would obey before understanding, who would kneel before hearing, who would stay when others fled. The silence was not meant to wound. It was meant to weigh. And now that the weighing is complete, heaven releases a verdict of favor. The pause was not to punish you. It was to distinguish you. Heaven's quiet was the sieve that divided the impulsive from the obedient, the impatient from the steadfast. You did not fail. You remained. You did not break. You believe. And because of that, heaven now calls you forth. The divine council has spoken your name again. There is movement among the angels assigned to your destiny. I see scrolls being handed to messengers who once stood idle, waiting for this very moment, the moment heaven could trust you with revelation too heavy for the untested. New clarity is descending. The fog that once clouded your discernment is lifting. The word that once felt silent now burns in your bones. The power that once seemed withdrawn now rises like a tide. You are no longer seeking direction. You are carrying divine instruction. The silence has unlocked sight, and sight has unlocked authority. Heaven says, the silence was not your end. It was your elevation. Every delay was a disguise for divine timing. Every unanswered prayer was a seed growing in unseen soil. What looked like a void was the womb of your calling. You were being trained to move by faith, not by sound, to trust the unseen pattern when the familiar voice withdrew. The silence forced your spirit to grow ears of discernment instead of dependence. And now, because you learned to trust the rhythm of heaven's breath, you will hear what others cannot. Revelation flows where obedience has been proven. Your name has been announced in the courts of destiny. The Father has authorized new favor, new mantles, new assignments. This is not a season of guessing. It is a season of unveiling. The silence you endured has made room for new sound. What once felt like emptiness will now overflow with direction. You will dream again, but this time with precision. You will speak again, but this time with power. You will walk again, but this time with purpose. Heaven has lifted the veil. The mystery that once tested you is now revealing its meaning. And hear this, heaven knows who obeyed before the silence began. Heaven knows who waited when others walked away. Heaven knows whose tears watered the ground of faith. These are the ones marked for revelation. These are the ones who will speak in this new era of divine awakening. The heavens are opening again, and the sound of God's voice will be clearer than ever before, not because heaven has changed, but because you have. The silence was never the absence of God. It was His strategy to make you hear Him in a new dimension. And now, as the stillness breaks, the glory that comes will confirm why the quiet was necessary. You were not forgotten. You were being refined for revelation. Type "I receive my revelation" in the comments if this message confirms your spirit. Blessing code 6060 now activates your new season of divine clarity. Child of purpose, if this message has stirred your heart, you are part of something eternal. Heaven's word is reaching souls across the world through this ministry, awakening hearts, breaking silence, and calling the chosen into obedience. When you give, you are not supporting a voice. You are sustaining a movement of light. Every seed you sow becomes oil for the next revelation, a spark that ignites divine encounters in the lives of others. I speak this prophetically. Your giving is not donation. It is declaration. It says, "I will not let heaven's voice fade from this generation." Join this divine work through Super Thanks, membership, or PayPal. The link is in the video description. Your seed will echo in eternity, and heaven will remember your obedience. Type ISOW into Revelation if you are standing with this mission. Blessing code 7777 is now surrounding your act of faith. Now that revelation has been released, heaven's attention turns toward your response. This is the hour of activation, the moment where prophecy becomes participation. You are no longer a bystander in your own story. Heaven waits for your yes. The silence that once restrained is now breaking open like dawn across a sleeping horizon. The Spirit of the Lord moves again, searching for those who will answer the call that was formed in the fire of their waiting. Everything that was paused is now prepared to move. Everything that felt withheld is now ready to unfold. The stillness that once surrounded you has become the womb of manifestation. Heaven is leaning toward the earth, whispering, "Move now." Heaven waits for your obedience. The time for hesitation is over. The heavens have already shifted. Now the earth must respond. You have prayed for instruction, and heaven has given it. You have asked for direction, and the answer has come. Obey. You not wait for another confirmation. The silence was the confirmation. Do not seek another sign. The stillness was the sign. Heaven's delay is ended, and divine momentum is at hand. Every command that was spoken in your spirit before the quiet season remains active, waiting for your movement to unlock manifestation. This is your hour to rise, to walk boldly, to declare before both heaven and earth, I am ready. Destiny does not wait for comfort. It waits for obedience. There are assignments hovering above your life like unclaimed scrolls, waiting for your agreement to descend. Every act of surrender you make now becomes a key, unlocking doors that years of prayer could not open. The test of the silence was never about hearing more. It was about doing what was already heard. This is the proof of maturity, when faith moves without sound. Heaven trusts those who obey in the dark to carry light into nations. You have passed the test, and now the next command awaits your voice. Speak it. Declare it. Move with confidence. Faith in silence is faith in its highest form. Anyone can believe when the voice is clear, but true power is born when you believe while heaven is quiet. And because you did, you are being marked with authority. Your yes will shake atmospheres. Your obedience will birth deliverance for others. The sound of your footsteps in obedience will be heard in realms unseen. Heaven's silence has turned you into a weapon of purpose, and now the command is simple. Go forth. Walk into the unknown, for it has already been prepared for you. The silence was the delay before your deployment. Every word you speak in alignment now carries creative force. When you declare obedience, heaven echoes your decree. When you move in surrender, creation bends to your authority. The power of activation lies not in hearing, but in doing. So arise, child of light. This is your moment to step into what heaven wrote about you before time began. You are no longer being tested. You are being trusted. The silence refined you so the sound of your obedience could release others. Move now. Heaven is watching. The command stands before you, not as an option, but as a divine invitation. The silence breaks for those who obey. Every act of obedience you release will reopen channels of revelation, restore divine communication, and multiply favor around your path. Do not delay. Step forward. Speak your yes. Heaven waits for your movement. This is the hour of activation, the transition from waiting to walking, from silence to sound, from being called to being commissioned. Move, and the silence will end. Move, and heaven will speak again. Type ISAYYS to heaven in the comments if this message calls to your spirit. Blessing code 8181 is now activating divine movement in your life. There are moments when silence is not stillness, but transaction. Sacred exchanges that take place in dimensions unseen by mortal eyes. While you wept in confusion, heaven was negotiating your elevation. While you waited in uncertainty, angels were recording your endurance, weighing your words, measuring your motives. The silence was not heaven ignoring you. It was heaven investing in you. Each tear that fell became currency in the courts above. Each act of faith in the absence of evidence became incense that rose before the throne. The silence was divine commerce, an invisible exchange where your obedience purchased what prayer alone could not. Heaven was not withholding, it was transacting. In that silence, angels moved with precision. They gathered the fragments of your brokenness and presented them before the Father as offerings of trust. They recorded your surrender in scrolls of remembrance. When you said nothing but remained faithful, the heavens heard everything. When you chose to trust instead of complain, the archives of eternity were updated with your name written in fresh fire. The silence you endured was not wasted. It was weighted. Each second carried significance. Each sigh carried substance. What you perceived as an activity was heaven's economy at work. This is the mystery of divine silence. It hides movement in stillness, exchanges in emptiness. Heaven often does its most powerful work behind the curtain of quiet. The pause you felt was a repositioning. While you were waiting for a word, heaven was rewriting your atmosphere. While you thought you were being delayed, you were being dealt destiny. There were spiritual negotiations unfolding beyond your perception. Covenants being renewed, destinies being altered, enemies being silenced. The very silence that tormented your flesh was the sound of heaven rearranging your future. Now the exchange is complete. The silence has fulfilled its purpose. The ledger of your obedience has been balanced, and what was withheld is being returned with interest. The heavens are releasing what they were holding in reserve, not because you demanded it, but because you endured. You did not lose anything in the silence. You gained what cannot be taken. The authority forged in stillness is greater than the revelation gained in noise. Heaven was shaping your name to carry weight in the Spirit, and now that name has been authorized for release. Do you feel it? The quiet is no longer heavy, it is holy. The stillness now carries sound, the subtle hum of victory, the soft rhythm of answered prayers manifesting in the natural. Your heart, once anxious for confirmation, now beats in synchronization with heaven's will. You have crossed from wondering to walking, from questioning to knowing. The exchange is complete. The silence was the seed. Manifestation is the harvest. The unseen became seen. The intangible became testimony. Look closely within your spirit, and you will sense it. A shift, a deep internal assurance that heaven has already moved on your behalf. The silence was not absence, it was assignment. The transaction is finished, and now the divine receipt, the evidence of what was exchanged, will begin to manifest in your reality. Doors will open effortlessly. Promises will surface suddenly. What seemed delayed will now arrive in divine sequence. This is not coincidence. This is completion. The silence was divine movement. Heaven's stillness was the sound of your victory being signed into law. The moment you stopped striving, heaven started writing. And now, what you thought was lost is being restored, multiplied, and magnified. You are not the same person who entered the silence. You emerge now as one who has transacted with the eternal. You are walking proof that silence speaks, not to ears, but to destiny. Type I receive the divine exchange in the comments if your spirit bears witness. Blessing code 9019 now releases heavenly restoration over your life. Now the tables are turning in the spirit. The same silence that once weighed upon you is now weighing upon those who mocked your waiting. The hush that tested your faith is now the weapon of your vindication. For the God who appeared silent has never been still. He has been moving in righteousness, preparing divine justice in your favor. Every whisper of accusation that was spoken in your absence is now being answered by heaven's movement. Every injustice that grew in the dark is now being dragged into the light. This is the hour of reversal, the moment when heaven reveals that its silence was never a weakness, but strategy. The very hush that made others doubt your calling is now the stage upon which your breakthrough will be announced. Those who looked upon your quiet season and said, "Where is your God?" will soon see him move with unmistakable precision. Heaven has waited until now so that no one can claim credit for what is about to unfold. The silence was not heaven's disinterest. It was heaven's setup. While they judged your stillness, heaven was writing your restoration. The silence was the courtroom where verdicts were being decided, where unseen advocates pleaded your case before the eternal judge. The scales of justice have tipped. The angels who once stood in observation have now been released in execution. The reversal has begun. The very absence that once hurt you is now your defense. Heaven's silence judged them, but obedience has vindicated you. Every false word, every betrayal, every manipulation spoken over your name is now meeting divine response. You did not have to argue, for heaven has argued for you. You did not have to fight, for the silence was your sword. While you wept in surrender, heaven gathered evidence. While you stood in stillness, righteousness was aligning itself on your behalf. The heavens have ruled. You are justified. Do not think the silence was wasted. In that quiet, heaven was gathering testimony. Your tears became witnesses. Your endurance became evidence. The silence that once confused you has become your courtroom victory. The judge of all creation has spoken the verdict. Not guilty. Chosen. Preserved. And with that decree, every assignment sent to destroy your credibility collapses under the weight of divine reversal. The same mouths that doubted will declare your restoration. The same hands that tried to close your doors will watch heaven open new ones. The silence that once suffocated your confidence now suffocates every spirit of accusation that rose against you. Now favor returns. Not the kind you once knew, but the kind that cannot be questioned. This favor carries fire. It burns through opposition. It defends what God has ordained. What was meant to bury you has become the ground from which your authority now grows. The silence that seemed like punishment has proven to be your greatest protection. Heaven did not speak because heaven was building a barrier. You were not being ignored. You were being insulated. Every delay was divine deflection, keeping you from battles that would have broken you too soon. The time of reversal has arrived. You will stand before the same situations that once brought you pain, and this time you will stand as victor. You will speak where you once wept. You will decree where you once doubted. Heaven has turned the record in your favor. The silence that once felt unbearable has now become undeniable evidence that God was working all along. This is not merely restoration. It is restitution. You will receive back more than what was lost, because justice in the kingdom is never equal. It is multiplied. Take comfort in this divine truth. Heaven's silence was not absence. It was arbitration. And now that the gavel has fallen, Your vindication will be visible. What heaven resolved in silence will manifest in sight. The God who was quiet is now roaring on your behalf. The silence has spoken, and it speaks justice. Type "justice is mine" through heaven in the comments if this word resonates in your spirit. Blessing code 3333 now seals your victory with divine reversal. The silence has spoken. Its voice, the wordless, has written eternity's truth into your spirit, that heaven's stillness was never absence, but selection. You were chosen to endure what others would not survive. You were entrusted with a silence that carried the weight of divine mystery. And now, as the final echoes of that holy hush fade, the heavens open once more, releasing affirmation like rain. The waiting has ended. The pause has served its purpose. The silence was not judgment to destroy you, but judgment to define you. Heaven has watched, and heaven is pleased. Listen carefully. The divine decree is being read over your life now. You are not forsaken. You are refined. The tests, the distance, the ache of unanswered prayers, all of it was shaping the vessel that now stands before the throne in readiness. You have learned to hear in the absence of sound, to believe without proof, to worship without comfort. These are the marks of the mature, the ones heaven can now send into battle, into destiny, into calling. The silence did not empty you. It sanctified you. You have been separated from the noise of the world so that your spirit can now resonate with the frequency of heaven. Do not mourn what the silence took. Rejoice in what it gave. It stripped away distraction, pride, and fear. It drew you closer to the essence of divine truth, that obedience is greater than clarity, that surrender is stronger than certainty. You stand now at the threshold of renewal. Heaven's silence has ended, but heaven's presence remains stronger than ever. The same stillness that once felt unbearable now feels holy. You will never fear the quiet again, for you know now that in that stillness, God is working, watching, and whispering in ways the ear cannot perceive but the heart can understand. Raise your hands in gratitude. Feel the weight of the new mantle that has settled upon your shoulders. You are seen. You are sealed. You are sent. You are no longer waiting for permission. You have been given command. The silence has built in you the strength to carry sound, the discernment to handle revelation, and the humility to walk in power. Heaven trusts you now. You are one who can move when heaven whispers, who can lead when heaven pauses, who can speak when heaven commands. So walk forward in peace. Let your steps carry the echo of obedience. Let your voice carry the tone of heaven's truth, and let your life be the proof that silence was never defeat. It was design. The threshold you once feared has now become the doorway of your destiny. Step through it with confidence. Heaven has marked you with favor that cannot be revoked. You are no longer standing at the edge of silence. You are walking into the sound of divine purpose. May your ears hear again. May your heart remain steadfast. May your spirit stay obedient. The silence has ended, but the story has just begun. You are the testimony of heaven's faithfulness, the one who endured the quiet and emerged with fire. You are seen. You are sealed. You are sent. Obey, for the silence is ending. Type "the silence is over" in the comments if you receive this final blessing. Blessing code 1212 now releases your new beginning in full power. Beloved, as this word settles in your heart, remember, this ministry is the bridge through which heaven's voice continues to reach thousands across the earth. If these messages stir your soul, help us keep the fire burning. Every act of giving is a seed that carries heaven's frequency into hearts still trapped in silence. When you sow into this mission, you're not giving to a platform. You're fueling a prophetic movement that rescues lives from spiritual famine. The oil that flows here multiplies through your obedience. Heaven sees every giver as a messenger of light. I speak it prophetically. Your gift today will echo as intercession for those still waiting to hear God again. You can give through Super Thanks, channel membership, or PayPal. The link is in the video description. Give as heaven leads you, and watch how your seed becomes sound in someone else's silence. Type ISOW into heaven's voice in the comments if you stand with this mission. Blessing code 4444 now surrounds your generosity with divine favor.